like normal. Okay, so it says that we're live, so I'm just going to believe that we're live, even though it doesn't say we are. So welcome, Neeshee. There will be, is that how you pronounce it? Because it's a name I've never said. Okay,
Yep,
so there are going to be people joining us, and I might reintroduce you, but this is going to be recorded onto my channel, so we're just going to get started. So welcome to Listen to the Stars. My name is Nicole. I'm here with Neeshee, and today we're going to talk about medical astrology. I've called it Medical Astrology 101 because Neeshee is going to go through basically some of the most fundamental components of medical astrology, and not all of them, but just enough because we are going to be looking at some medical charts. So basically charts of real people with medical issues. And so it'll be fun if you can know just a little bit about how he is looking at these charts. And if you are interested in astrology, tarot, the cards of truth, and spiritual topics in general, please subscribe because this channel has a bunch of videos like that. And let's just get started. So welcome. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on your channel.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this because I really love medical astrology and I'm still taking a million different courses, but medical astrology is definitely going to be something I study in the future, just not right now.
Yeah, totally.
So a lot of people probably haven't heard of you. At least I haven't seen any videos of you on YouTube yet. From my searches, maybe there are some.
There aren't any, so that's why you haven't seen me.
Yeah, so I really want to introduce you to people. So the most interesting thing I found about you is that you basically come from a family that is interested in Vedic knowledge, and we're immersed in it. And you're from a lineage of astrologers and palmists and people that are basically like seers and can know things, you know? So I want to really know a little bit more detail about your upbringing and what led you to the profession that you're doing now. Because it seems like it was kind of a family thing that you just were able to align with and wanted to continue.
Yeah, it's true, you know, and I never saw myself doing this.
That's so interesting.
Even several years ago, I didn't see myself doing this. My grandfather was a big influence on me. And he was really steeped in Vedic knowledge, still is, reading Vedic knowledge constantly. And he was a palmist, and I never thought much of it, you know, growing up. I just thought, wow, this is really cool. You know, he can read people's palms, and people would come and read his palms. And my mom would always tell me stories growing up that, you know, people would always be coming and getting their palms read by him and asking questions. And I thought that was interesting. I mean, I knew there was something to it, you know. But I also had an uncle, you know, a great uncle, my mom's uncle. And I think it was my experience with him that really proved to me like that there is something real about like psychic knowledge and the ability to actually perceive something about somebody that you couldn't possibly have gathered from, you know, in any other way. I mean, it's impossible, you know? And he just, you know, he was very unconventional. He didn't read my palm like you know, if you go by palmistry book, even like through Vedic palmistry, and they teach you about how to see the lines and certain planets and so forth. And he didn't actually read my palm, you know, in terms of looking at it. He just sat me down and he just put his finger on it. He just touched my palm, then he took it off, and he couldn't speak. He had a throat condition that didn't allow him to speak, so he just had a big whiteboard. And I'm sitting there in India on his porch, you know, it's like really like kind of this iconic scene, you know. I'm just sitting there on his porch with him. He was 80-some years old, and he pulls out this whiteboard, you know, and he just starts writing, immediately starts writing, you know, and he says, are you emotional by nature? I said, yeah. I said, I am, you know, the moon is my Atmakaraka, you know.
Oh, wow. I
didn't know that at the time, of course, you know. I didn't know what Atmakaraka was. I didn't know my chart, you know. I'd never seen my chart. I didn't think about it. And he just started asking me like question after question, you know, and it was just like, wow, you know, there's no way you could know that about me, you know, that you could have seen that, you know. And that just blew my mind because I didn't tell him anything, you know, and he didn't even like read my palm, like, let's see what's happening with all your lines. He just touched it, you know, It was not even that long. He didn't even hold it. He just touched it. And he could even see like all my spiritual experiences that I'd had. You know, he started telling me about my guru. I hadn't even told him I had a guru, you know?
Wow.
And he started telling me, you know, there was a whole concern at that time amongst my family that I was going to be too spiritual and not get an education. And so that was like the crux of why I was even there. You know, they were hoping he would tell me like, you know, go get educated, you know, forget all these things. You have to be practical in life. And he said, you know, I said, you know, I've had these really incredible experiences with my guru. You know, I feel like I've seen God, you know. And
wow.
before I said that, though, he wrote to me, you know, he said, you have seen God physically. And I said, I've never told anybody that I've felt that way. You know, I've never confessed that I felt that way to anybody, you know, like, how did he know that? You know, that just blew me away, because that was like my most profound experience in life, you know?
So now I'm just the curious one here, but can you even describe what that was like? Or like what, so if you say, if you saw God, what does God look like? I mean, you don't have to answer.
Well, it's more esoteric than it sounds, you know?
Yeah, of
His
course.
way of expressing that to me was communicating an experience that is beyond, you know, mere vision, you know, but that was his way of describing to me that I had a concrete experience of the divine, you know, which coming into my guru's company, you know, like my guru is Adida Samraj. People can look that up later. I'll spell it out later too. But when I saw, you know, my guru's physical body, you know, I felt a transmission coming from him that just, you know, blew my heart wide open, and that just felt like a flood of light entering my body, you know, and in that moment, it's like beyond the mind, you know, you just feel like with your own eyes, you're seeing the form of God, you know, you feel like you're beholding divinity incarnate, you know, because you are. When somebody is transparent to the divine, they're just radiating God, you know?
Right. Like perfect channels of that energy.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, and my guru's confession is that, you know, that he is that he is an avatar, you know? And so I just recognized him as that. I said, wow, you really, you know, this is really true, like physically true. Like you are incarnating as the divine. And I never told my family that. I didn't know how to express something like that to anybody, you know, but he just pulled it out in about 5 minutes, you know?
That's so cool. So,
And
okay. Oh, I'm interrupting you.
no, it's fine. I was just saying that was just an experience to me, that was my first experience with something of a kind of psychic nature that was really life-changing.
Right. So with that, did you eventually learn how to read palms?
I didn't.
So then how did you bridge that to where you are now, where you have astrology certifications, you're reading charts regularly?
Right. That's the interesting thing, is that I didn't approach astrology directly. You know, I approached it all through Ayurveda.
Wow.
So I decided I wanted to study medicine, you know, and I looked at, like, I knew I didn't want to do Western medicine. I thought about doing naturopathic medicine, but then I just felt like naturopathic medicine wasn't quite hitting it for me. You know, it's like, I like that they use natural means, but it wasn't getting to the root of the illness the way that I felt like was possible. Somehow I stumbled into Ayurveda, no accident, obviously, it's in my background. I never thought I'd study Ayurveda. So then I ended up studying Ayurveda, and that's how I really got exposed to Vedic astrology. You know, not directly. You know, I never had conversations with my family members about astrology. You know, it was just in the psyche. It was just kind of there. I never thought about it, you know. So I studied Ayurveda, and I realized really quickly that a big part of Ayurveda, as it's traditionally practiced, involves astrology. You know, and I saw this actually a lot more clearly when I started studying Tibetan medicine. Because in Tibetan medicine, which is very similar to Ayurveda, but it's not Ayurveda, they have a more traditional approach still. You know, whereas Ayurveda has gotten a lot more popular, and it's come to the West, and there's a contemporary form of it, we can say. You know, I'm not saying that's good or bad. You know, it's got its pros and cons. But Tibetan medicine doesn't have that. It's still like very few practitioners of it, and it's very pure. And they've preserved a lot of Ayurveda. So when I met my Tibetan medicine teacher, one of the first things she said to me was that you can't, a good physician has to be at least a minor astrologer, and a good astrologer has to be a minor physician. And I said, "Are you kidding me?"
Wow.
I said,
I love that.
I said, that makes so much sense. I said, of course both of these things would need to be like one thing. And she went on to tell me how in her education and how the traditional medical education is that they study medicine for several years, 5, 7 years, even more. Then they study astrology for just about the same amount of time. And then they graduate as doctors. So my teacher is a full-blown astrologer, as well as being a full-blown physician. And that's just how she understands herself to be a physician. She doesn't think about like that being two things, like we think about it. We have astrologers and we have doctors, but traditionally that's not how it is. And that was eye-opening to me. I started kind of like researching it, and in Ayurveda, it's the same thing. We just don't see it as much, although nowadays we're seeing it more because astrology is getting popular and Ayurveda is pretty popular.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, you learn them both at the same time, and after she told me that, it was like an omen, it's like I started seeing patients and I felt like there were things I wasn't able to see, just through the lens of medicine, like there were imbalances they were having that I could identify the imbalance. I can still treat it, but the why of it, wasn't totally evident,
Mm-hmm.
And you pull up their chart. I said, you know what? I just start looking at charts. Maybe I should just look at astrology. Like maybe that's going to explain this. Like if this is a bigger influence than like something they're doing with their diet and lifestyle. Boom. Every single time, I did that, I got the answer I was looking for.
Yeah.
The gap.
That's amazing. And I really do love Tibetan medicine. I took a whole course in it. I thought it was fascinating. And I didn't take it in order to become a practitioner, but it's a beautiful, beautiful science. And it really is extremely traditional.
Very
I would
traditional.
say. But I took that course like 10 years ago, so I can't remember everything.
That's great.
But the cool thing is, though, what I really noticed is that it almost felt as though the practitioners that we would be introduced to had a high level of intuition that they were calling upon. And I would also actually use my intuition because they would bring in different practitioners and they would work on us. And I would actually try to intuitively guess what was wrong with the person before she did the pulse checking and everything. And I was always right. So I was like, wow, you can really, if you really work on your intuition, or at least try, sometimes intuitively you can know what's wrong with the person, and I don't ever want to do that, but I thought that was so cool that like there's such a sensitivity to these different medical arts, that if you are really in tune, that just takes you to the next level, right?
I think it's really important that you said that, because medicine has a strong part of it is a psychic art. It is profoundly intuitive. You can't just treat somebody based on the information that you get. The information is always incomplete. For one, you're relying on them. They don't know what's wrong with them. The people don't know why they're ill. They have some ideas. They know they have some bad habits maybe, but they can't tell you their diagnosis. They don't know. You're trying to figure it out by what they're telling you, but the most information you're getting is because they're actually there in front of you, And that's why, my Ayurvedic teacher, Vaidya Mishra, he always said the first thing you do when you see a patient is you don't sit down and talk to them. You don't sit down and look at their history or their intake form that they filled out for you. You sit them down and you take their pulse before any other information enters your mind, And the pulse is like, we think about pulse as really concrete, but it's not actually as concrete as it seems. It's actually very psychic. It is actually almost entirely psychic. And some people might disagree with me on that because it is very technical to learn how to take the pulse, and you are actually feeling some very literal things, but you're primarily tuning into the person, and you're primarily listening to their body. You're listening to their physiology, We say that pulse diagnosis is nadi pariksha. Nadi means channels, the subtle channels. And my teacher would say that, when you're taking the pulse, you're really listening to their nadis. You're really asking, what's going on? What are the nadis telling you that they need, that they're not getting, or that's wrong? You know, you're really listening to that, you know?
Wow. I love that. And it's so cool that it's the rhythm of the body. So I'm sure
Right.
that you having a strong moon, or, you know, being ruled by the moon, that has a part to do in like why you would be drawn to a type of medicine where the pulse is so important.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
It's so cool. So, all right. So you started studying astrology because you were super interested in Ayurveda. And so now I just wanted to kind of introduce people to the fact that now you're studying with Ernst Wilhelm. And are you studying with anyone else right now?
I'm just studying with Ernst.
And I think it's really cool because you use the tropical zodiac and you're getting really great results with it. And I wanted people to know that because we're going to be looking at some charts in a little bit here so you can kind of follow along. And yeah, so let's just, I guess now we should talk about some of the fundamentals. So for people that maybe know a little bit of astrology, what are some fundamental principles of medical astrology?
Well, I want to get broad here for a second
Okay.
before I get like really hone in on the more traditional understanding. I want to really use it as an opportunity to define medical astrology.
Please.
Because I think it's a lot bigger than just, you know, Ayurveda combined with astrology, or looking at health through an astrological lens. I think that astrology altogether is really about healing. Whether you're a medical astrologer or not, whether you know Ayurveda or you're a physician or not, I think that all astrologers are really participating in something that's about healing. In a way, I think all astrology is, quote, medical in that sense. You know, why do people come to an astrologer? They have a question, you know, they want to know how to navigate their life. They want to understand themselves. They need guidance, you know, they need healing. You know, they're looking for something from you that you can tell them that's going to empower them to live their life in a better way.
Right.
That's powerful. I mean, that's really powerful to have somebody come to you in that position, just like somebody walking into a doctor's office. You know, when a patient comes to me, they're looking for me to show them a way to be healthier, you know, and therefore to be happier, you know. So I think astrology really is about health, you know, karmic health, you know, psychological health, therefore physical health. Physical health is really the end of it, you know, the last end of it. Before all of that, you know, is your psychological health, you know, what's going on in your mind, in your emotions, in your life. That's what we talk about when we do astrology with people, you know, and that's a big deal. I think what's healing about astrology at its core, whether you're doing, quote, medical or not, or just doing a birth chart reading, is the fact that people can come to you with an issue or anything, and you can tell them, you know, look, this is why this is going on for you. It's like, this is your chart. These are your patterns in life, you know, like karmically. And you're going to end up facing this type of thing. You just have to realize that. And this is how you can handle that in the best possible way. And people just knowing, you know, that it's just a pattern, you know, it's like, it's not personal. It's not like the universe has conspired against them, or like that they're experiencing some like really personal anguish, or like people are against them, or, you know, it releases you of identifying with your life as a personal thing, and everything's happening to you. And, you know, it's like, it's much bigger than that. You know, you're participating in this complex interaction of patterns and energies, and you're just one of those things. How are you going to deal with that? You know, that observation alone is so healing before you do any remedials.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And sometimes, you know, the people that are coming to you just for a regular reading, like when I read for my clients, sometimes I'll see some issues, especially one of the biggest things people come to me for is grief, like dealing with like letting go of a loved one, either from death or a breakup. And sometimes I see with how the people are handling things that if they don't learn how to process their grief, it will lead to a disease. And I say to these people, like, okay, really, with the path that you're going on now, really be careful, because if you don't process these things, and then I also give them tools, it can lead to disease later on. So also with astrology, it can be preventative. It can be kind of like a preventative care sort of situation. And I also read tarot cards. So, that's a whole different thing, or maybe a different way that I'm seeing these things. But it's really amazing that like you can see the connection through astrology and tarot between basically people's patterns and how they're dealing with them, and how emotional, spiritual, and mental patterns can lead to disease. So it's like you get to see that first step of it. Or, you work backwards. I feel like medical astrology is like looking at the disease and then going backwards and seeing, okay, what are the mental, spiritual, and emotional things that were leading to that in the first place. So a lot of the times I'm on the preventative side, like, okay, get your life in order because you're overworking, you're hanging on to grief, whatever it is. So I think that's so cool. Because I would 100% agree with you that it's a healing art in general.
It's a healing art. Yeah, I think astrology should be considered to be a healing art. And I can't imagine approaching my patients now without seeing their birth chart, because the amount of information I can glean from that is so much deeper and so much more complete than sitting with them in the room and just going over their symptomology and why they're there and looking at them physically and saying, okay, this is their constitution, this is their imbalance, and okay, what am I going to treat? And, I'd also like to know their dasha, what's their planetary period, maybe that's what's going on here. You're just in a Saturn period,
Right.
What about that? Maybe you're eating right, maybe you're doing the right things right now, maybe you're not wrong, but you're experiencing Saturn's influence in your life right now. And that's not going to be easy. It's going to bring that.
So speaking of Saturn, have you seen specific illnesses arise during Sade Sati when Saturn is in the exact sign as the moon? Because I've seen the charts of people that have a Saturn return with the moon conjunct Saturn in their natal chart in Sade Sati, basically, where they've lost loved ones and things like that have happened, where it's like, more traumatic situations. I'm just wondering if there's any kind of illnesses associated sometimes with Sade Sati.
I don't have like a bunch of case studies on that, but that would be interesting to explore. Yeah. But I think that your observation is pretty spot on, that when Saturn and the moon are experiencing that combining of energy, that people are going to be having a lot of grief. There's going to be a lot of psychological imbalances.
Right. Well, all right. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about is basically every single sign has different parts of the body that it deals with, different diseases that it deals with, right?
Yeah, right.
So what are some basic examples of that? We don't have to go through every single sign.
Let's see. Well, Taurus rules the cervicals,
Oh, I wanted to ask you about your great uncle that didn't have his voice working.
Right.
Did he have any afflicted planets in Taurus or anything like that? Like anything in that area of his chart?
I don't know his chart.
Oh no, that'd be amazing to see.
That would be amazing to see. But I don't know his chart. He's no longer alive either. Maybe somewhere somebody has a record. I should find out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taurus is that region you're just talking about, the neck, Really important one is Virgo, because Virgo has to do with the stomach and intestines. The intestines more, colon. So Virgo has a lot to do with digestion, and anybody who studies Ayurveda knows that digestion is a huge deal.
Yes, and extremely important.
You can look at chakras too, like Leo and Cancer, relate to the crown chakra, the head. But, I also think about Leo in the heart. My headphone keeps falling out, sorry.
It's okay. At least you can hear me with one ear. What rules the ears then? I've always heard that Jupiter rules hearing.
Yes, very important. I'm glad you mentioned the ears. There's some good connections there with Jupiter, It's funny because you can look at it through any lens and it'll make sense. Body part, element, dosha, whatever. So Jupiter relates to ether element, Ether is the first element. Everything comes out of space, Space gives birth to air. Air gives birth to fire, water, earth. Earth being the most concrete. Ether being the most not concrete. So that's space element. And space element also relates to sound. You know, that's why we say, like, you know, the yogis talk about hearing the Om sound, you know. And
yeah. And that the world began with the sound.
with the sound,
right?
exactly. You know, so ether relates to sound. So ether element also relates to our ears. And it also, the ears are considered to be the fruit of the kidneys.
Wow.
So here, this is the connection between Jupiter and diabetes. Diabetes is a
Wow.
urinary disease. You know, it's classified in Ayurveda as a urinary disease. And the kidneys are basically your urinary system. You know, they filter the urine. That's interesting, right?
Well, it makes so much sense because one of the first signs that like people in the earlier stages of diabetes will have is they will, I believe that they frequently urinate.
Correct.
Something like that. And the urine itself has a lot of sugar in it.
That's right. Always frequent urination, you know?
So it makes sense that that would be like very obviously connected.
Yeah. And look at what else happens with people who have diabetes is that it's a blood sugar imbalance, right? Because the pancreas is not secreting insulin, you know, or it is, but the insulin is not being taken up properly. So there's an uptake issue or there's a production issue. Either way, it ain't happening. What happens when your blood sugar gets out of balance? You get spacey.
That's
Your
so true.
ether element goes out of whack. And people who are struggling with diabetes often have hypoglycemia beforehand, you know? Hypoglycemia meaning like low blood sugar problems, you know? When your blood sugar's out, you just feel really like just ungrounded, you know? So again, that ether element is getting to be a little bit, you know, vitiated. So Jupiter, this is how Jupiter connects to all of those things, you know? So it's interesting. You can break it down in so many ways. Just see how it makes perfect sense.
That's amazing. Okay, so yeah, basically with medical astrology, you're looking at the planets as elements, right?
Planets as elements, that's a huge part of it. Yeah, planets as elements.
And then the signs as parts of the body or different qualities.
Different qualities. And those also have elements too, you know? And that gets more complex when you're looking at signs because, like, take Scorpio. I like to use Scorpio as an example because Scorpio is a water sign that's ruled by Mars, you know, which is like a planet that exemplifies like fire element, you know? So you have some interesting energies going on with Scorpio. You got two elements coming together there that are almost conflictual. So medically, that is interesting to look at. So you look at the elements of the sign too, the quality of the sign. And there, for the planets that rule two signs, you have, you know, kind of a yin sign and then you have a yang sign, you know, a more expansive expression and a more conservative expression.
Yes. Yeah, I love how you're refreshing some of my knowledge on this. It's so nice. Yeah, that's amazing. I was going to say something else. Also, do you study the Varga charts too in relation to all this?
Yes, I do.
And which charts are the most important for you to look at?
You know, I think that I always like looking at Navamsha for one. You know, that's not technically something that's like medical, you know, but it is like has such a strong relationship to the birth chart, you know, that I like to see. I feel like I can't really know the birth chart totally until I've seen Navamsha too.
Right.
So I like to see that. If I see an exalted planet in the birth chart, I want to see, well, how is he doing in Navamsha, you know? If I see debilitated planet, I want to see, well, how is he doing in Navamsha though? You know, is he exalted over there? Like, what if he is? That changes the story for me. So I need to get a complete look first, you know? So I'm always going to be looking at Navamsha on top of birth chart. Next thing I'm going to look at is like D27.
Yeah.
You know, strengths and weaknesses. And then D30. That's your disease chart.
Yep. Perfect. Do you look at any of the higher divisional charts like the Shashtyamsha? I can't even say that word, Shashtyamsha, to see, I don't know why I can't say it today, to see kind of like if those other divisional charts get boosted, because sometimes people say to look at the D60, the Shashtyamsha, to see if, you know, the overall of everything. Do you also do that?
I do.
So you have to get
The
accurate birth
D60 is
times.
at the root of it all, right?
Yeah.
So I always look at 27, 30, and 60. Those are the three. But, it just depends as well. It's not like I always do that, Sometimes I don't, to be honest with you. It depends on what I need to get clear.
Yeah, and you seem extremely intuitive in your approach, but also like very skilled. Like it seems like you're using a good combination of both, where you're not just gonna like go and get all technical at the expense of actually finding a solution that's workable.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just saying that intuitively since I don't know you very well, but that's what I'm reading from you.
I think you're right. I have a very intuitive approach to all of these things. I'm not the type of person who can get really too bogged down in the details of it and the this and the that. And some people are a lot more technical, and I like to get technical, but only to the point where it gets me what I need. I need to get clear about what's going on with the person. And for some people, it's like, boom, I see that. I don't even need to go beyond the Rashi chart, But for other people, something's not making sense or it's too complex. I need some deeper layers. I need to peel back some more. So I'll peel the next layer, go to the Varga charts,
Yeah.
Look at their yogas. I'll look at all kinds of, always got to look at Rahu Ketu,
Yes,
Big
Rahu
deal.
Ketu is so important.
Big
and
deal.
I know Ernst Wilhelm is going to be teaching a course coming up on Rahu and Ketu, and it's going to be really amazing. So I hope that you take that.
Oh, I'm waiting for it.
I'm impatiently waiting too. I just thought of an interesting question. I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, but we have Jupiter entering tropical Scorpio. It just entered. And so we were talking about Jupiter and we were talking about Scorpio. So when these slower moving planets like Jupiter and Saturn transit signs, do we see more of specific kinds of diseases in general, or do these have specific healing or disease indications for the population in general when these planets move around?
Yeah, I think there's two ways of looking at it. One is like, you can look at it as like, yeah, cosmically, now Jupiter is in Scorpio. That's going to have an effect versus Jupiter being in Libra, know? But the other thing is like, but what about the microcosm, What does the Jupiter and Scorpio mean for the microcosm? It's going to mean a lot more for everybody who has Jupiter and Scorpio in the Rashi chart,
Right.
That's prominent. It's a transit for them, they're going to be experiencing that more. I think, transits are interesting and they need to be studied more in relative to medical astrology, because I also think that in a way they have more of a psychological effect than like necessarily like giving rise to concrete disease. I think they only give rise to a disease like kind of through a series of effects there. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying, but also like we were talking about before we started recording, one of my favorite medical astrology examples and also my favorite example to show how much I love house cusps is when my boyfriend broke his rib, his Mars was exactly conjunct his ascendant point to the degree exact, and he has a difficult Mars, and so that for him triggered that event exactly. So to me, transits can show really like exact things that happen. And we were talking also about the eclipse, and for me that was a very health oriented eclipse, and that was triggered by exact points. And then when planets moved over those points again, the same health issue flared up for me. So I feel like I think I know what you're saying, but I also am pretty like gung-ho about it being like concrete because I've seen it,
Here's what I mean to say.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm misunderstanding what you were saying because I knew.
Yeah, here's what I mean to say. I mean to say that say Jupiter is in Scorpio now. I think that generally speaking, we can't really say like, oh, this is really going to create a lot more of this type of imbalance.
Okay, for the general public.
Right, for the general public. Okay. Now, if Jupiter is transiting your Lagna, this is a big deal. The Lagna is the body,
Yeah, so listen up to anyone who has Scorpio ascendant, Scorpio rising in your chart.
Yeah, there you go. That's how you're going to grok this transit. Transits are, in other words, what I think I'm trying to say is that I think transits are relevant in the context of the individual. I think that that's where you see like the concreteness of the imbalance factors. Now, the one exception to this I find is the sun and the moon. You know, what's going on with the sun and the moon affects our health a lot all the time, you know? Like the sun, you know, it just was entered Libra for the autumn equinox. Did it move into Scorpio? I think it's in Scorpio now.
Yeah, I think it just moved.
Just moved into Scorpio. So he was in Libra, and that's a sign of debilitation. You know, that's not good news for health. You know, that's why we see a lot of health problems, you know, at the time of these seasonal shifts, right? In Ayurveda, we talk about solstice and equinoxes being times when you need to engage in purification practices, when you need to go through panchakarma, basically, you know, 5 therapies, detox therapies.
I really want to do that. So if I ever visit your area of the world.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I really have to do that at some point. So that's all fascinating. I love medical astrology. I really, really do. Like that. I can't wait until I go through all the studies I want to in order to be able to do that. It's so cool to me. So.
You mentioned the eclipse. Should we talk about that?
Yeah. So like I was saying, for me, I really experienced that on a health level. So I was asking you, did you notice people, and I'm not going to reveal my chart, but did you notice people with similar factors in their chart having health issues, you know? And also it was a health related eclipse in general.
It was.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, this was an intense eclipse, you know, psychologically and physically. I noticed a lot of my friends, for some reason, I happen to have a lot of friends who had planets or points crossing the eclipse. You know, they either had Rahu in Leo or Mars in Leo or Sun in Leo, or they were a Leo ascendant, you know, or the moon in Leo. All these people got hit, you know, really strongly. Everybody got hit, really, but these people really got it because that's, you know, that's right on their sign, you know, major planets too. And yeah, I'm noticing a few things. One, I noticed people getting a lot of fevers.
Wow.
Especially people who had Mars in Leo.
Yeah, that makes sense. So much fire.
So much fire, and Rahu's there, right? Rahu brings planets into excess. So I noticed a lot of like fevers coming up, and like recurring, you know, like not just a one-time fever, like, oh, what an eclipse, I got a fever, you know, I mean, like next couple of weeks, another fever, you know?
Yeah, well, we had those planets moving back on those points. And that's what I noticed with me was like, I got really sick, more sick than I'd been all year, in bed, not able to work on my channel or anything. And then I was like, oh, it went away. And then it was like, boom, boom, boom. No, you're sick again.
Totally. I also noticed people just getting flat out tired, like fatigued, you know? That was a big part of the eclipse, was fatigue for people. People just didn't have energy, you know? And they just felt kind of robbed of their vitality, you know, which is part of what happens in an eclipse. You know, eclipses can really rob your vitality. That's why they say you should fast during an eclipse, because anything you try to eat during that time is not going to get digested too well, because the sun and the moon their energy is being blocked out. That's what we need for digestion and for nourishment. So
yeah. And I was reading a book yesterday or the day before, and it was talking about some Western astrologer was advising to eat solar foods like oranges and like, I can't think, like turmeric would be something, or hibiscus, you know, like solarized foods during the time of a solar eclipse. So you can kind of up the solar energy in your body to more, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the word, to better prepare, I guess.
On that note, I'm going to say that I'm going to put in a little plug here for green smoothies.
Yeah.
Because I think that they are an excellent solar supplement. I think there's so much sun energy in greens.
Wow. I never thought about that, actually.
Because the sun stores its light, you know, in chlorophyll, you know, through the process of photosynthesis, you know. So like greens have so much vitality, you know, and because they're rich in chlorophyll, like dark leafy greens, you know, and they're just sitting there like getting the sun, you know. When you eat them raw, I noticed two things, you know, and Ayurveda doesn't agree with me on this. So I'm espousing a rogue point of view here, Ayurvedically, which is that when you drink green smoothies, your digestion is really served, you know, and second, you get rid of toxins. You know, we know that the sun rules our vitality, rules our digestion. And fire is responsible for breaking things down and for burning up toxins. You know, if you drink green smoothies, you notice that happens like readily. You know, you have better appetite. You know, you feel lighter and you feel like you have more energy and you digest all your food better. And you get rid of all the stuff you don't need. You know, you detox as well just immediately, you know. That's awesome. So greens and sun, that's something I want to put forward, medical astrology.
Nice. Well, before we run out of time, we should look at those chart examples.
Yeah, let's look at them.
So yeah, you can just share your screen, and I haven't seen any of these charts yet, so I might have some questions. But I'm excited to see what's going on here.
And you're welcome to tell me something that you see that maybe I don't see.
Perfect. I'll do my best.
Totally fine. Okay, here we have a chart that is, this is autoimmune. That's more complex. Let's go to an easier one first.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see this chart?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so this is a chart of somebody who I recently worked with who got lymphoma, which is a type of cancer. And interestingly enough, I'm just going to point this out because I love how the planetary periods can be used for health. He got it during his Rahu Ketu period, which is pretty classic. You know, Rahu Ketu both are infamous for causing diseases that are really difficult to treat. You know, cancers or viral or bacterial infections that are very hard to treat. You know, chronic degenerative diseases that are easily made fatal. So he got it in 2013. He was in Rahu Ketu. He started that on December 2012, and that didn't end till December 2013. So that was when he got hit with lymphoma. And, you know, the main thing, you know, irrespective of his Rahu Ketu placements, like this is an example of some of the more simple ways that I work when I'm looking at charts. Like I don't get into like, what are the signs and like they represent this and here's this planet there and that's what this means. Like I'm just saying, look, he's got Saturn on the ascendant.
Yeah.
You know, he's got serious karmic repercussions on his body. You know, when you have Saturn on your ascendant, anywhere Saturn is, you know, he's a planet of karmic repercussions. You know, he's going to be giving the results of karma. You know, and it's never easy. It's always difficult. It's harsh. And he's got it right on his ascendant, you know, and his ascendant is Scorpio, which is tumultuous enough, you know. And so interesting case because he's also very spiritual, you know, he'd been meditating for 40 years, you know, and he's had a really strong spiritual practice and all of that, you know, since he was 16. It's not like he lived an unhealthy life for 30 years and then suddenly he got spiritual and now he's, you know, reaping the results of his unhealthy lifestyle. You know, this is a different type of person. You see disease like cancer hits them. Cancer's like that. A lot of people get cancer and it's like, how did this happen? You know, they were so healthy and they were just, you know, so normal and you never would have seen it. And well, it's one of these karmic diseases, you know, it's a very karmic disease. Now there's things that you can do to get it too. I'm not saying there's not present lifetime things that you can do to get it. And our environment doesn't help us. Neither does bad food and chemicals and all that stuff. But
right.
There's a lot of cases where cancer is really something karmic, and that's not to say they deserve it. That's not what I'm saying. So that should not be misinterpreted.
Well, can karmic mean hereditary?
Yeah, genetic.
Okay, so like you can literally, because I always like the phrase or the saying, we are our own ancestors. So it's like you can go back and see, you know, hereditarily what's causing it. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So this person has cancer, but what's kind of like scaring me a little bit is that this person has a bunch of planets in the sign of Cancer. So
exactly.
Does the sign of Cancer relate to actual physical cancer?
I don't think so.
Isn't it weird how?
But it's weird, right?
Well, I mean, I was just asking because I saw those planets there. So I'm just wondering, you know, why is it even named Cancer in the first place? That's so weird.
I know. Why is it named that? I had that same question when I saw this chart because the two things that jumped out at me is Saturn on the ascendant and he's got 5 planets in Cancer, you know?
So And so the cool thing about that, or not cool, but what I'm really noticing is that during Rahu Ketu, that whole stellium or grouping of planets is activated. And
That's right.
so, you know, you have a lot of important planets in there. And Ketu is not easy. So anything else you have to say about this chart in particular?
Yeah, I think, you know, when you have too many planets in a sign, it's an elemental imbalance. You know, we want to have our elements in balance. You know, balance is the key. So if you have too many energies going into one sign, a water sign, you've got way too much water element, you know, and not enough fire element, not enough air element. You know, it's like that's really going in excess. And lymphoma has to do with the cancer of the lymphatic system. You know, that has a lot to do with fluids. You know, and there he has all these planets in the sign of Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. The moon governs all of our fluids, you know.
Wow.
And Cancer's a water sign, all of these things, you know. And so that's really jumps on. He's got some important planets there. The sun is there, you know.
His body.
His body, you know, his K2 is there, you know. Jupiter loves being in Cancer. It's awesome, you know. That's why he got cured. You know, that's why he's so spiritual too.
So does Jupiter, you're saying Jupiter rules the ether element though, so it's not necessarily going to be water, but Jupiter is a fatty tissue, right?
Jupiter, yeah. See, Jupiter is also Kapha.
Okay.
You know, see, this is where it gets like kind of, it can get difficult, you know, because there's like so many different ways of looking at like Jupiter's ether on the one hand, but, you know, Jupiter also is like Kapha and a heavy planet and gives a lot of water. And
yeah.
So, but he does. He's exalted in Cancer for that very reason, right?
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I noticed about this chart is that Saturn and Moon are both in the signs of Mars. So there's kind of a same Lord conjunction happening there.
That's right.
So Saturn is kind of starving the Moon in that sense.
Right. And the Moon is the dispositor of all these planets in Cancer, you know? So it's a difficult scene. And, you know, so that's really key to understanding it. And the fact that, you know, that he's in a Rahu period, you know, it's like he was in Rahu Ketu when he got lymphoma, and he's still going to be in Rahu until 2020. So this is when people tend to get, you know, their most difficult health problems, you know, in a Rahu or a Ketu period.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting case. Now, in a case like this, I didn't really have to get into too much, but, you know, you look at the D30, for example, and he has Saturn conjunct Rahu Ketu, you know, that doesn't help anything, you know, to have Saturn joining the scene with the nodes of the moon.
Right.
So,
wow.
You know, it's interesting. These things are interesting.
Oh yeah.
His moon and Mercury also have a little bit low Shadbala, you know, like moon is 93%. So, and him being the dispositor of all these planets and opposite the Saturn and all of these things. So he also had diabetes.
Oh, wow. I have a quick question. What's his Atmakaraka?
His Atmakaraka is...
Or I guess I could just look by
seeing the sun.
Yeah, it's the sun.
So see, that's even more, you know?
Yeah, I'm being lazy, I guess. Yep. So that's really difficult. So, you know, K2 is a separating planet, so that can separate him from his vitality.
Exactly. And the sun in Cancer is not really, you know, the greatest thing for vitality to begin with, you know? Even though he's in the sign of a great friend here, Cancer is still a water sign, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So, all right. Should we look at it?
One example. Now we can look at, let's look at this osteoporosis one. This is an interesting one.
Yes.
Not as straightforward, but an interesting connection. So this person has osteoporosis. She's a female. And here, what jumped out at me is Rahu Sun conjunction in Capricorn.
Yes.
Okay. And the reason is this, and she's in her Sun planetary period. So you see these planetary periods, they always line up. They always make sense somehow. She's in her Sun period. That's when she got diagnosed with osteoporosis. Now we know that classically, according to Brihad Parashara, the Sun rules the skeletal system and the bones. And you and I were talking earlier, and I was talking about about the kind of indirect correlation of that. And I'll say that again, which is that the sun rules the bones in the sense that you need a healthy digestive fire in the body in order to transform your nourishment, your food, into something that builds you. Your food is something that needs to build your body, that needs to nourish all of your tissues, And in Ayurveda, we talk about 7 tissues, and they're all like a layer, So the bone is really at a deeper layer there. It's the 8th tissue, Sorry, it's not the 8th tissue. We have 7 tissues. I was thinking about something else, thinking about 9. Wrong number. But it's, yeah, it's right there before the reproductive tissue, right there before the bone marrow and the reproductive tissue, which are the last 2. So the bone is really crucial, and it's a deep tissue in the body. And so you need a lot of nourishment to build good bone, Your food needs to be transformed at every level through all those tissues. It means that your bone tissue is not going to be strong if all the tissues before it are not strong,
Wow.
Because each tissue is formed from the tissue before it.
Okay, so this makes sense because osteoporosis is weak bones, and I've heard that women who have been anorexic or bulimic, like there are a lot of women that are older now that when they were younger, it was really cool to be thin, and now they have osteoporosis because they never fed themselves. They didn't nourish their bodies properly.
That's right.
So this makes complete sense to me.
This is why one of the treatments for osteoporosis is muscle building.
Yeah. Wow.
Because the muscle is, precedes the bone. If you can build enough muscle quantity, then you will be able to build more bone, So this is where the sun is key, because the sun is that element of transformation that's governing the transformation through each tissue,
Right.
So for good bone, you're going to have, that's why the sun rules the skeletal system. Okay. So now we've made that connection.
So can I just say something I see that you probably, I don't know, maybe you're going to say this, but that's disposited by that Saturn that's in a great enemy sign. And it's, starved by Mars, which is a strong Mars. That's heavy starvation.
Exactly.
You're probably going to say that, but it's just it's so gratifying to find things.
Yeah, it's great. I'm glad that you saw it. I wanted you to point out the things that you saw too, because it's cool that we both see the same thing also, right? That's interesting. So what's interesting about this is that osteoporosis is a condition that actually, even though it sounds more like a Vata type illness of like depletion, it's actually driven by Pitta, because the bone is actually being, is wasting away because of too much acidity. There's acidic toxins that are literally deteriorating the bone. They're eating away at the bone like acid. Okay. That's really what's going on with osteoporosis. Now, Vata's driving Pitta in this case. He's fanning the flames, which is not good, but it's still the flames that are doing the work of osteoporosis. Okay. So Rahu is an airy planet. We know that, and we also know that Rahu brings planets into excess, So when you have Rahu's sun, it's like we're going to see some inflammation. We're going to see inflammatory tendencies. And now we know, again, now we take it to really see, we could see Sun Rahu conjunction and not draw that conclusion as well for somebody. But the reason we can definitely draw this conclusion is because, like you said, it's in the sign of Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. So Saturn is the dispositor. He's conjunct Mars. Heavy starvation here, Mars is in his own sign of Scorpio on top of it. So it's this like really strong starvation. Mars is a super fiery planet. So there's definitely inflammation here in the body, Rahu is driving it, blowing it out of proportion too. There's an already inflammatory tendency, and Rahu is joining that party and just fanning those flames, and so here you have the sun period, and, I think it was actually in Sun Saturn, which was January 2016, that the person got diagnosed with osteoporosis.
And the interesting thing about that is Sun is the ruler of her 6th cusp. So
that's right. That is correct.
Pretty amazing stuff.
6th cusp is, of course, has everything to do with enemies and disease. I'm just spelling it out for people who are listening.
Yes.
And the interesting thing is that part of what led to her diagnosis was that she fell and broke, had an injury of a bone injury. She fell she was running and she fell and broke like her elbow joint or something like that. And so again, Mars is always involved with injuries.
Amazing. All right. I think we have time for a couple more examples. So,
Okay, let's go to another one here.
and I love how you're bringing in the elements, because I know that that's so important to understand when it comes to medical astrology, but it's also for me, like one of the most difficult things to grasp, because like you said, like you have to put it all together. And so you're really good at putting it all together, you know?
Yeah, you got to get a full picture. And that's what I love about astrology, is that you can get the most holistic vision, you know? Let's look at this one. This is a really interesting one.
And just so everyone that's watching, if you have any questions, we will take a few questions after these examples. So feel free to ask. We're ready.
Here's what stands out to me is Mars, Rahu, Sun conjunction in Aries. This is powerful stuff, okay? Because Mars is in his own sign of Aries. Sun is exalted in Aries, and Rahu is joining the party, you know? That's not a good party for Rahu to be joining, you know? I mean, it could be, but Rahu's not making it something that's great.
Right.
Ketu's on the ascendant as well. So, you know, the body has got that Ketu influence on it to begin with. What happened here is that the person had a major accident that left them with significant neuropathy. Neuropathy is like when the nerves, inflammation in the nerves, or a condition with the nerves that really inhibits sensation and or mobility. So there can be numbness, but there also can be just inability to move, you know, in the same way. It's not paralysis, but it can be very painful. So here you have an exalted sun that's coming into conjunction with Rahu. So, you know, there's some overconfidence here. You know, this person got an accident by through an athletic endeavor, you know, that he was pushing way too hard and just kind of thought he had it, you know, and boom, he fell, you know, fell off of his bike actually, going way too fast. So Sun Rahu can give some overconfidence. You know, Mars, of course, is going to drive the energy of that, you know, like, yeah, you know, I love this, so passionate, you know, about it. You're just going for it, you know, that go for it attitude. Aries, of course, you know, forward moving, not really thinking about, you know, what's going to happen if I do this. I'm just feeling it, you know?
Right.
So that's how you get it, you know, and Mars, of course, notorious for accidents. Rahu's joining with Mars. It's not so great. Now, the interesting thing about where we can make the neuropathy connection is that we know that Mars governs the feet. And Mars governs the feet because Mars governs mobility, our ability to move forward in life, okay? Psychologically and physically, okay?
Wow. I actually didn't know that, because I always just related Pisces to the feet.
Yeah. See, when it gets confusing sometimes, you know. For example, Jupiter energizes the liver, you know, but the liver is a fiery organ. Okay, how do we understand that? Well, that's a whole thing too. So some of these connections, you really have to get like how the connection is made to really see it, you know. So Mars is governing the feet because Mars governs our ability to move forward in life. You know, if we don't go after what we want and think we can make that happen, we don't go anywhere. You know, we just feel like, you know, I don't have the willpower for it. I don't feel strong enough to go get what I want, you know. If you do, you get moving, you know. So Mars is really your ability to put one foot in front of the other, you know, at every level of your life. And so here, this person had an accident that now he can't walk. He can't walk very well at all. You know, his mobility is compromised. He's literally struggling to put his one foot in front of the other, you know. And so, and he has significant neuropathy. You know, this was a major, major accident. Like, this was not a minor accident. This was like major, like he's never going to be the same.
Wow.
A debilitating accident. So, you know, this isn't like a disease so much in the way that it is something though that affects somebody's body, you know, and their health, you know, in a significant way. And we can see that too, you know. So the recklessness, you know, of Aries, you know, when he couldn't really afford that kind of recklessness with Rahu joining the scene and Mars being there fueling the passions, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
that's important. Um,
That's wild. And his sun is his Atmakaraka, so having that
exactly,
so close to
exactly,
Rahu too.
exactly.
Is there any reason, or is there any link to the seventh house or seventh cusp there that you were able to make with why that related to the accident
You know,
or that health issue?
I didn't make that connection in terms of his health issue, but we do know the seventh cusp is the cusp of relationships and marriage, and this has a significant effect in his relationship because now he's very dependent on his wife.
Wow.
He's having to take care of him all the time, and he's already Rahu in the seventh house. You know, this isn't his known territory to begin with.
Well, look at Venus is his Darakaraka, and it's the lord of the eighth house, and it's basically very strong in its own house there. So that was going to be a theme at some point. Eighth house is other people's resources, relying on other people. So
right. And, you know, Mercury is there too. And I'm pretty sure, no, he wasn't in Mercury when this happened. No, he was at Saturn, Jupiter, the end of his Saturn dasha.
So interesting. All right. So I think let's take a few people's questions. And if we don't have very many questions, we can look at another example.
Okay.
But we had some really cool people in here asking questions. Hello, everyone. We have some comments just saying that, I'm fascinated by this because I have multiple incurable chronic illnesses. I see traditional doctors, but also refer to astrology and spiritual-based aids and information. And basically, this person is saying that her illness affects her thyroid and she's a Taurus. So that's really interesting. There's got to be something going on with
that's pretty
your
classic.
sun then.
Yeah. Taurus has a lot to do with the thyroid.
And then we have Dan Hendricks saying hello. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
So he says, Rahu periods also tend to bring about diseases, health afflictions that aren't easily explained and hard for modern medicine to diagnose and understand. So it's good that he's confirming that. And
very true.
Flory is asking, can you give examples of planetary and sign aspects that give hormonal or ovarian problems?
Okay.
Because I've heard the moon is highly, so associated with the menstrual cycle, but I know there's other things. Like I've always thought Mars has to be involved sometimes if there's like, if it has to do with the menstrual cycle. I guess she's just speaking about hormones and ovaries, but I'll let you answer.
Okay. There's a few levels to it. Yeah, you're right about the moon. I'm glad you mentioned the moon because the moon is governing, secretions and the balance of those secretions and the flow of things, right? The proper flow of things. So glands, of course, are secreting things. They're holding something they're supposed to secrete. For one, they need to secrete it. Second, they should secrete it in a proper way. And third, other things need to be absorbing it effectively. That's a proper functioning, endocrine system, we can say. So the moon is involved, but Venus too.
Right. And Venus or moon is exalted or Mula Trikona in the sign of Venus, Taurus.
Exactly.
So see the little path.
You made the perfect connection. So Venus also governs the reproductive tissue, our deepest tissue. And the reproductive tissue is, of course, going to relate to all organs that relate to the reproductive system, ovaries and all of those things. And as well as, the hormonal system,
Mm-hmm.
So Venus is definitely going to be involved there. What was the other planet I was thinking about here? She was asking about?
She was talking about basically anything about her hormones or ovaries, what would rule that? And I do want to mention that I have personally seen the waning moon or even just the waning moon can sometimes cause issues in that area. It doesn't even have to be afflicted necessarily. Maybe a little starvation because the moon in a Venusian sign, even if it's a nice moon, will cause starvation. So a little bit of starvation or something can cause it. But the waning moon I've seen causes issues just from what I've researched.
Totally. Influence of Saturn on Venus or moon. That's going to create some reproductive issues that can create some hormonal imbalances. But I also want to think about Jupiter a little bit. you know,
Ooh.
which might not be an obvious one. Venus is really the more obvious one here, but
This
Jupiter
is
being
making
ether,
sense.
yeah,
This is
Jupiter
making
being
sense.
ether, you know, and
Mhm.
ether, space element, is responsible for the intelligence of our body, you know, the intelligent functioning of our physiology. In other words, our bodies have an innate intelligence. It knows how to balance itself out. You have to do something to it to interrupt that process, okay? So
Wow.
Jupiter, we also know, is a planet of wisdom and knowledge and intelligence and all of those things. So Jupiter really is, in a large way, responsible for making sure that our body's functioning intelligently the way it's supposed to. Things are being secreted like they should in the right amount and being absorbed in the way that they should by the right places and right things, you know? Anytime that's getting compromised, you know the intelligence of the body is being compromised in some way. So Jupiter is going to be involved in some way. Look at Jupiter too. You know, how well is he doing? You know.
Yeah, and as you were speaking, I was thinking about how Jupiter is a natural karaka for children.
Right.
So, you know, if you
Right.
have a debility, or I'm not going to say exactly what, but if you have problems with your Jupiter and you have to look at a lot of factors, that can give you reproductive issues having children. So, obviously, if you have hormones that are all crazy or ovarian problems, that Jupiter being in a difficult position, having malefic influence in your chart would show that. But to me, Jupiter is so representative of our creative sexual energy. So to
That's
me,
right.
that makes sense. Just like, you know, a whole different look at that planet makes sense to me,
Exactly.
you know? So that makes sense. I mean, if you do have a lot of patients that have hormonal issues, or you know menstrual issues and you'd be interested in doing another show, I feel like that would be really amazing because that's something that is
That's a big
close to me.
topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot that can be said about that. That would be interesting to do.
Yeah, so if you think of some charts, just let me know. Also, there are two more questions. What are some remedies for acne in Ayurveda?
Okay, it's a huge question. There's a lot of factors there with acne, but a major part of it, of course, is going to be the liver. You know, the
Really?
liver
Oh yeah, toxins.
toxins in the
Sorry.
toxins in the blood is acne. Okay.
Really?
Toxins
Wow.
in the blood is acne. This is why women tend to get acne during their menstrual cycles, because during the menstrual cycle, they're purifying their blood.
Yeah.
They're purifying their blood, so their liver is getting kind of activated. You know, he's heating up a little more than usual, you know, which is why there's a lot more Mars gets stirred up. People get kind of, you know, angry or irritable. You know, all these intense emotions come up through Mars as well. Um, So the impurities that are in the blood have to find a way out, and the skin is the major organ of elimination. So it gets pushed to the skin, you get breakouts and things like that. So acne always traces back to the liver. Okay.
Wow.
Jupiter energizes the liver, you know.
Mhm.
So we have to look at Jupiter, you know, to see what's going on with the liver at a foundation root level. Okay. Then we need to see what's happening with Mars, the blood, you know. How what's going on, you know? Is this someone who's got Mars like in Scorpio or Mars in Aries? You know, Mars is afflicted. What's going on? You know, strong Mars or an afflicted Mars. Either way, you can have an imbalance with it. So the remedy is complex. There's not one thing I can really say except an overall principle, which is you need to keep the liver cool, you know, and you need to make sure that you give your liver time and space to do what it does, which is purifying the blood that circulates to your whole body, you know. Mercury also is going to be involved here because Mercury has to do with the skin.
Mhm.
Just want to put that out there too. But yeah, you need to keep the liver cool because it's a hot organ, you know. It's a very fiery organ. In the modern day, he's getting overheated just by, you know, EMFs and our fast-paced lifestyle and hot foods, all those things. You need to cultivate time of rest, of peace, going to bed before 10. This is a big one, okay? I'm
I'm
gonna
bad at that.
I'm gonna put this one out there because after 10 p.m. the liver gets reactivated for round two. The liver shouldn't have a round two, you know. That's his time to start detoxing. So liver will be driven into excess heat by staying up late. That's an easy one, you know.
I'm going to write
So
this down. Bed before 10 p.m.
10. Anytime the liver is overheating, the blood is not going to be doing so well. He's going to get hot too.
Mhm.
He's not going to be detoxing that blood as much as he would like to. You know, toxic blood is going to lead to acne as well as a lot of other things. So I really recommend taking care of the liver. One remedy, concrete remedy, I will say Shilajit. Shilajit. Shilajit is really good for the liver. It's good for just about everything under the sun. And I highly recommend it to just about everybody. And it's especially good for the skin because of what it does for the liver and the blood. And you can also make a paste out of it by mixing it with honey. It's like a goo, okay? It's like a resin. Mix it with honey and just put it topically where you have acne. That's going to help.
Wow. All right. I have so many questions of my own that I just want to keep asking, but all right, let's see here. Nina was saying, well, if your liver starts back up at 10 p.m., how long do you have to stay up for round 2 for it to start up again?
Meaning like how late do you stay up before it goes to round 3?
Yeah, round 3 it would be then.
Okay, when does round 3 happen? Well, round 3 is not going to happen for a while, you know, because the 10 to 2 is pitta time. Okay. So we're not going to have pitta time again at night.
Wow.
You won't have it again till 10 to 2 in the morning.
Jeez. So you have to stay up all night.
All night.
Yeah. It was a joke.
But aren't good.
She also had another question. Can the moon in a Venusian sign bring an eating disorder?
Interesting question.
Or, you know, maybe there's other things that can show an eating disorder that maybe that would be also.
If there's starvation, if the moon is starved somehow, okay? There's starvation on that moon. We need to check the Avashta on that one because it's psychological, okay? Now we know that like the moon in a Venusian sign, especially Taurus, and you know Venus being planet of desires, these people like to eat, okay? But you're going to be eating emotionally,
right?
Okay, but why are you eating emotionally? Probably because you feel starved on some level, right? So yeah, I think that is an interesting connection to make. Good question.
Well, I also want to say that I believe, and please correct me if you don't agree, because you look at more medical charts than I, but K2 in the 6th house or in the sign of Virgo could also potentially lead to an eating disorder because K2 is where we want to really perfect. And the 6th house in Virgo is our health. So people can get kind of like really nitpicky about their health to the point where it can like almost become an eating disorder because they're trying to be so perfect in that area, you know, like having to eat perfectly clean and exercise all the time. And if that K2 or the Lord of that K2, Mercury, then, or whoever's ruling the 6th house is in bad dignity, then I would see that as being a potential from what I've studied.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Should I stop sharing my screen or should I keep it sharing?
Let's just see.
Okay.
Nina just said, I noticed so many people with Scorpio and Taurus energy having problems with binging and purging. So.
Yeah, that is true. You know, Taurus goes into excess, right? Because ruled by Venus, planet of desires. And Scorpio is just tumultuous, you know. They're always going through the highs and the lows, you know, that intensity that burns inside of them, you know. Sometimes it gets channeled destructively.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, Scorpio. Well, because they're the opposite.
And they're opposites, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we had another person that really wanted you to look at did you have a different diabetes chart in there that we didn't look at yet?
I do.
So if you can just say a couple things on that, then that person will be probably pretty happy. And then I think Neeshee has to go, or we don't want to make this too long of a video, but I think people were definitely interested in medical astrology.
Okay, here's the diabetes chart. And just the thing that stands out to me more than anything else is Jupiter in Virgo, which is a sign of a great enemy. And Virgo is also a sign that has to do with disease and imbalances. So in a way, that's all I really needed to know. You know, it's like, we know the ether element isn't working. We know she's going to have high cholesterol. We know that she's going to have, blood sugar imbalances. Kidneys aren't going to be working too well. We also know if we go to the sixth cusp, there's a Rahu-Saturn conjunction. That's really bad news, okay? So, and a Sun-Moon conjunction too in Capricorn. So there's a lot of difficult things going on here. This person had several health issues, but she also had diabetes. And I find Jupiter in Virgo to be a pretty classic diabetes indicator. And if not diabetes, at least hypoglycemia of some kind. At least somebody who's pre-diabetic or who has blood sugar imbalances of some kind.
Yeah.
Or who's experiencing weight gain.
Right. Because Jupiter is that expansive quality, and then it's in an area that it doesn't like. So it's doing so in kind of an unhelpful way, right?
Yeah, he's not able to really be who he is in Virgo, it's that's not a good sign for him. And so he's the intelligence of our bodies too, and he's ruling the kidneys and ether element. And so those things just aren't going to be energized the way that they should be,
Perfect. Well, you can stop sharing your screen now so I can send you off properly. I just have to say, I really, really enjoyed speaking with you. It was a lot of fun.
Likewise.
And thank you for your patience. I tend to interrupt people a lot. So I'm glad
that's totally fine. I enjoy the interaction.
The more excited I am about a topic, the more that I'll do that, because I just want to just jump in and be a part of it. And oops, sorry, I accidentally just clicked out. Can you see me? I clicked out of the screen, so I can't read it. Let me just see if I can open up that screen again so I can see people's comments. Whoops. I lost everyone, but here they are again.
Okay.
So everyone was just saying thank you, and I want to say thank you. And just so everyone knows, Neeshee does astrology readings. He does a karmic analysis, and he does medical readings at his website, which I've already provided the link for below. So please check him out. He's obviously incredibly skilled with the medical stuff and Ayurveda. So do you share where you're located and everything?
Yeah, I do. I'm in Kauai.
Perfect. So if any of you guys are in Kauai and you want to visit and, have a consultation, that's also a possibility. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Otherwise there's Skype.
Yeah, you can do medical astrology readings over Skype then.
I do a lot over Skype. Yeah. It's nice to have the person in person, but I use technology.
Perfect. And yeah, if you find a bunch of examples with the hormonal stuff, that I just love that topic. So it would be wonderful to speak on that. And it seems like a lot of people were interested in asking a bunch of questions. So, it'd be really cool if you would like to come back on. And yeah, I'm just making sure that there weren't any other questions, but thank you. I'm actually going to stop the recording and stop the live, and then just stay on, and it'll be 1 second. So thank you, everyone. This was Listen to the Stars. Be sure to subscribe and share. And thank you, Neeshee.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.